Hi, my name is Autif Kamal. This is another episode of Be Logical. This one is on solar panels. In particular, it's about the waste involved with solar panels. Personally, whenever I thought of solar panels or solar power, I hadn't considered that there would be a dirty or a wasteful side to it. It always seemed very clean to me, and at least like just on the power part of it, that part definitely doesn't seem there's a problem in terms of how clean it is. But the concern is with disposing of solar panels. That's I think the biggest issue with waste as far as solar panels are concerned. Now, Jason Deering, he writes for the Associated Press. He wrote the article Solar Industry Grapples with Hazardous Waste. He wrote it pretty recently. Now basically the lifespan of solar panels are about 20 years. That's the most common estimate that I've seen. I've also seen like 25 or 30 to 40 years, but the most common has been 20 years. And actually, solar panels could be replaced even sooner than that, because in time, before those 20 years, there will be upgraded solar panels. They will find ways to improve on solar panel technology, and so some households or some businesses will switch out their old solar panels for newer ones. Okay. Now, there is an organization which keeps track of the waste, particularly with solar panels, and it is the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition, which is situated in San Jose. Yeah, they monitor the amounts and destinations of e-waste in general. And in 2010, they recorded that California alone had 1.5 billion pounds of solar panel related waste. 2 million of that was lead, which is poisonous, and 600,000 pounds of that is or was cadmium. And the problem with cadmium is that it can mutate your DNA, which the implications of that would be it would affect your offspring. So I got that from Josh Harkinson, who writes for the Mother Jones. He wrote the article Solar Panels, Tomorrow's Toxic Waste, and he got that from the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition. Now, based on how much e-waste a company produces, the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition gives a scorecard. Okay. Now, they've contacted 114 solar companies. Only 14 of those companies had responded. Those 14 companies, though, make up 51% of the solar panel market share. That isn't necessarily to say that they make the most waste, but that is possible. It is possible that those other 100 could produce just as much or more waste, but that's unknown right now. Now I have a question for you. Imagine that you own a solar panel company. If your company was 100% clean, wouldn't you tell everybody? Because for you, that's just good advertising. You want to tell everybody that you got a good score with the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition. Okay. On the flip side, if you owned like a burger shop, or if you owned an auto mechanic shop, you wouldn't want to tell everybody that, like, hey, my establishment is dirty, because no one wants to eat at a dirty burger place. and relatively speaking, no one wants to have their car done at a dirty mechanic shop. They don't want, like, I've never worked in a mechanic shop. I don't know. They don't want, like, dirty oil in their cars. Okay, they'd rather have, like, a relatively clean place for their services to be given to them. And I would think the same thing would be true for solar companies. Now, given that they haven't responded to the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition, it makes me wonder how many of those solar panel companies are not responsibly disposing of their solar panel related materials. It just seems kind of shady that none of those 100 responded. It makes you think that maybe they're trying to hide something, because if they were responsible in terms of being clean, then they wouldn't have to. They wouldn't have anything to hide. So just something to think about. Okay, so I'll give you an example of what a solar panel company could do in terms of not disposing of their waste responsibly. I'm getting this example from Ariana Unjung Cha, who writes for the Washington Post. The name of the article is "Solar Energy Firms Leave Waste Behind in China." She wrote this back in March of 2008. A company by the name Luoyang Zhongyi, a high technology company, dumped silicon tetrachloride in some of China's corn and grass fields. Silicon tetrachloride is a byproduct of polysilicon. Polysilicon is used to make the solar cells in solar panels. And when that byproduct was dumped into China's corn and grass field, it rendered those fields unusable, which means it was eliminating food sources for the Chinese inhabitants that depended on them. Now the thing with this high technology company was that they saved millions by not having to invest in pollution recovery. That's something that China allows. Okay, now think about other solar panel companies, such as those in the US. If they know that they can save millions on pollution recovery, on not having pollution recovery in China, on not having to go through those processes and having all the equipment, then do you think that any US solar companies would head over to China to do that? I would say there has to be at least one. The number of US solar panel companies doing the same thing as this company is not clear, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were a lot. So, knowing that only 100 US solar companies have contacted the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition, and that they could save millions by dumping their byproducts in China's fields, true or false? All US solar companies are responsibly disposing of solar panel related materials. For my case, I would say there has to be some US solar companies that aren't responsibly disposing of their solar panel related materials. And just to give you some information to reinforce that point, in 2010, US exported 80% of e-waste to developing countries, and those developing countries do not have the infrastructure to deal with that e-waste. Okay, and on top of that, more than 2/3 of the United States does not have laws requiring the recycling of e-waste. I'm getting this information from Ishhan Nath, who wrote the article "Cleaning Up After Clean Energy: Hazardous Waste in the Solar Industry." He wrote this in the Stanford Journal of International Relations. And on top of that, listen to this quote from Bob Tinetti. I don't know if he's still working for the US EPA, but or the Environmental Protection Agency, but this is the quote from him. "The current situation is that the US is exporting electronics and it is not being regulated, and we don't intend to regulate it. Our policy is that none of it should be hazardous waste. We want it recycled." Now, it sounds good because he's saying that they want it recycled, but the bottom line is, if there are not laws and consequences for not dealing with hazardous waste accordingly, then there's no incentive for like solar panel companies to recycle their waste. And think about it like this. Imagine that you have sitting in your house a non-functional solar panel. What's easier? Tossing that solar panel into a dumpster that's just next to your house, or I guess in this case maybe someone else's house? Or is it easier to drive to the nearest recycling facility and go through all the paperwork and the process of having that solar panel recycled? Now, I would say it's easier to do the former, to just dump it somewhere. And I'm not trying to justify the dumping of it. I'm not trying to say that they should dump it instead of recycling it. I'm just trying to get into some, like, the head of those who make the decisions of not recycling solar panels. Just going back to Bob Tonetti, unfortunately I don't know his exact position in the US EPA, but I know he's in Washington and he's done some presentations on the monitoring of e-waste in countries outside of the US. And I got this quote from the Silicon Valley Toxic Coalition and the Basel Action Network. They both prepared the article, "Exporting Harm, the High-Tech Trashing of Asia." Now, some other really interesting information that I got from them was that United States is the only developed country to have not accepted the Basel Ban Amendment. And what that does is it would ban the exporting of hazardous e-waste to China. Now, it just bans the e-waste to China, that's a start. This doesn't stop e-waste from going to other developed countries such as Pakistan, but it's definitely a start. Nonetheless, United States did not sign on to that. Okay, so you have more and more reason to believe that US solar companies are encouraged to dump their waste somewhere else because it'll save them money. Okay, now it would be a legitimate question to ask, can solar panel related materials be recycled? And actually, according to Melanie Friedman of First Solar, they can be recycled. First Solar has recycling plants, e-waste recycling plants throughout the United States and Europe. And according to her, 90% of materials in solar panels can be recycled into useful products. I'm getting this information from Trey Ganger, who writes for Earth 911, and he wrote the article, "As Solar Power Advances, Disposal Would Become an Issue." Okay, so basically to summarize, it seems very likely that a lot of US solar companies do not want to recycle. They don't want to because, number one, there are not laws that are being enforced to get them to do so, and because that's happening, they're trying to save money by, or a lot of US solar companies, I think, are trying to save a lot of money by dumping their solar panel byproducts in other countries. Okay, and that's it. Alright, thank you.